What's happening, Expeditioners? It's Peter here, and I just wanted to hit you up with some news here. I just finished my new book here, the Amazing Money Stories book. This is the true tales of greed, generosity, success, and luck. And this book is on sale right now. You can pick it up on Amazon, but I wanted to give you a little taste of the book here. I thought that's only fair. In fact, over the next few months, I'm going to give you lots of tastes. I'm going to basically read a bunch of chapters, and I'm basically going to, in every episode, read a chapter and then just tell you about how that chapter came to be. Some people want to know what goes on in my mind, probably for research purposes when I am dead, to make sure that no one else is afflicted with my demented thinking. But I really actually enjoyed writing this book. It actually took me a lot longer than I thought. I thought it was going to be a quick book to read, and it has, I will tell you, that I was actually going to call it like 101 True Tales of Money, but I ended up doing more than 101 stories, and I was like, I don't want to gyp anyone. I don't want to rip anyone off here. So it has actually 108. So I could have said 101. When you get it, you're like, it doesn't have 101, it has 108. What a value. So one of the things that has happened before I get into chapter 1, which should be an anchor story for you, is that just over the years, over my career of working in money and finance and investments and financial coaching and just my passion and interest in the money world, you actually read a bunch of stories that are money related. Some of them are very hardcore money related, and that's actually a separate book that's called Money is Fascinating. So I've carved those out into a different book, but just the interesting human side of money. And so I wanted to capture as many of those stories that I could remember. Some of them are pretty recent. I've read them recently, or they were in the news or something like that, and I did a little research to flesh them out and put them in the book. But some of these are from way back, maybe even my childhood or when I was studying money and economics in college. And so I just wanted a place to put all of those because I think the human element, how money affects us, what people do, and that's why it's called Greed, Generosity, Success, and Luck, because a lot of these stories are not friendly stories. They are not stories that you want to live up to. A lot of these stories are people that had a lot of money and found their way into crime or a life of crime or hurting people or going broke. Some of these are just heartwarming stories of people who never thought they'd have money and then figuring out a way to stumble into it or unexpected success. And some of these are just plain luck. And a lot of these are pull at your heartstrings because of people who had maybe a little money, not a lot of money or whatever, and what they did with it was really momentous. There's a lot of people out there that don't get the accolades that they probably should, even though they've really sacrificed everything they had for the good of humanity, for their communities, for their friends and family. So wanted to put those all in the book, and I wanted to keep them short. If you are a fan of old radio, I loved Paul Harvey back in the day, the interesting stories that he would tell and the twist endings. He was like the original M. Night Shyamalan. I really wanted to do something like that. And some of these stories are a little bit like that. Maybe the setup is a little ambiguous and then you get hit with that ending, which is something like, you're like, oh, I didn't know that. But in the interest of not trying to force some of these stories and trying to lead you down paths that aren't super obvious, I just wanted to tell some of these stories and not necessarily have twists, just some of the stuff that you probably didn't even think about that you didn't know. So with that, I will just say that some of them are just, I tell you who the main character is and just try to give you a little backstory that makes it interesting. So if you do want to pick up this book, it's available in paperback and an audiobook, so you can certainly do that. But like I said, over the course of the next few months, I'm just going to read you the chapters, so you can definitely check out the book from here. But if you want to get them all for that road trip, I tell you what, this is also a perfect book for being a bathroom companion. You're going to go into your bathroom and spend 5, 6, 7 minutes. You can crack out a couple of these stories and some other stuff. But basically, they're just all encapsulated. They're not related to each other. Every chapter is one story in just a couple pages. They don't have to be super elaborate. With that being said, with the stage being set, let us enter with the first story here. And I've titled this one, A Swell Time. In the late 1970s, a young entrepreneur named Richard Branson found himself on a quest to win the heart of a beautiful woman. Little did he know that his pursuit would lead him to an unexpected love affair with a Caribbean paradise known as Necker Island. At the time, Branson was far from the billionaire he is today. As the founder of Virgin Records, he was still trying to make his mark in the music industry. So when a realtor offered him an all-expenses-paid trip to the British Virgin Islands, Branson saw an opportunity to impress his new love interest. The catch? He could only bring one guest. Ever the romantic, Branson chose the object of his affection to join him on this tropical adventure. As the helicopter soared over the crystal-clear waters and pristine beaches of Necker Island, Branson was captivated by the 74-acre hideaway untouched beauty. But his heart skipped a beat when the realtor revealed the asking price, a cool $6 million. Desperate to impress his companion, Branson made a bold move. He offered the highest amount that he could afford at the time, $100,000. The realtor, unimpressed by the lowball offer, left the couple to fend for themselves on the journey home. But fate had other plans. A year later, the realtor reached out to Branson with some surprising news. No other offers had been made on Necker Island. After some negotiations, Branson managed to secure the island for a mere $180,000, a fraction of the original asking price. Over the years, Branson poured his heart and soul into transforming Necker Island into a luxury retreat. The great house underwent a stunning remodel, boasting a spacious master suite and an array of recreational activities. From kite surfing on the white sand beach to ziplining from the great house to the shore, Necker Island became a playground for the wealthy and the adventurous. But the island held a special place in Branson's heart for another reason. In 1989, he married the woman who accompanied him on that fateful helicopter ride years earlier. Joan Tump Branson became his bride in a ceremony held on the shores of Necker Island. Today, Necker Island stands as a testament to the power of serendipity and the enduring nature of love. What began as a whimsical attempt to impress a girl turned into a lifelong romance, not just with a woman, but with a piece of Caribbean paradise that Branson now calls home. So that is chapter 1 of this book, A Swell Time. There's a little play on the swells of the ocean. If you ever own an island, you'll see those. I don't see them on my island because my island is just a flooded part of my yard when it rains hard. But the story that I wanted to put in there is because I had actually heard of that story a long time ago, and I didn't realize exactly how much he paid. But there are a number of stories where people who have resources, have great opportunities, great credit or whatever, are able to capitalize on some just incredible deals, right? To buy a pristine 70-acre Caribbean island for $180,000, I get it. It was back in the 80s, and not everyone could do that. But we have people buying vacation homes and cottages for $400,000 or $500,000. I'm not doing that. But what I really was interested and surprised about is now, I don't know what Necker Island goes for, but I would say hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe $1 billion, whatever, but certainly millions of dollars. What I like about this story is that it's not just about Richard Branson, who is a guy I've been following for many years with Virgin Atlantic and then even Virgin Galactic, and just his ambition, but yet also the ability of him to stay relatively down to earth, unlike a lot of other billionaires, okay? Who knows how down to earth these guys really are, especially when you own a space company. But I've liked that about Branson. He seems to have maybe good perspective, and I think he's a little older, so he has that life perspective. So I've actually been a fan of his. I mean, not like a raving fan, because I don't know that much about him or what he believes or his philosophy of life or anything like that. But just been really interested in someone who seems to be a good guy, right? Seems to not necessarily, burn bridges and be a scorched earth kind of billionaire. He seems to do it the right way, and he seems to put people's and customers' needs first. A little bit of maybe Steve Jobs, but nicer, maybe. But what I love about this, and I guess the lesson that I really liked about this from the average investor and the average person experience, is the idea of having what I call opportunity money. And it's one of these things where I talk about when I work with people and they have access to a line of credit, or they have access to apply for a line of credit. And I did this too. And one of the earliest things I could think about was I have a friend, Brian, and he runs a business, and now he makes loads of money, millions of dollars a year. And he told me when he first started his business, the business would not have survived had he not gotten a line of credit, because he applied for $600,000 a line of credit at the time. And that allowed him to make payroll when he actually didn't have the cash on hand, knowing that in the future he was going to have that. Now, it's not just running that business, but think about this. Think about how many times we have been in dire economic straits. Think about maybe the last recession, the Great Recession, and how many houses just collapsed in prices, or people were fire selling cars. Anytime you hear fire sale, it's just like getting rid of stuff, transferring ownership of stuff at prices that are basically just a formality. For example, I remember, I think it was 2009, there was a house that was for sale, I think somewhere in Miami, somewhere in Florida. And it was this grand 4-story canal front house. So it's on the water. And the owner obviously was dumping it. And not only that, but as a car guy, I read about this on the car blog, and I probably should have tried to track down the story. I don't think I could find much detail on it. But I remember at the time, they were putting on the car blog because this owner was trying to sell this house. And he was throwing in for free his Ferrari F40. Now, if you are a car person, you know what the Ferrari F40 is. It is Enzo's last supercar. It's considered one of the great super hypercars of all time. It is now one of the most expensive cars on the market because they only made 400-ish of these cars. They don't trade hands very often. And in fact, just this last summer, I believe, or last fall in Italy, they had a parade of Ferrari F40. So people from all over the world flew in their F40s. Many of them are still in Europe. And I believe that gathering event was the most valuable car gathering in history. I don't know what F40s go for, but they go for millions of dollars. But this house was going for an asking price of $600,000, which was a fire sale for what the house was worth. And the owner was throwing in his Ferrari F40. Was not part of the contract, wasn't going to muddy the waters on, well, you're getting the house and the car. He was just going to give you the keys. And I remember reading that article, and at the time, F40s weren't trading for the multi-millions maybe they are now, but it was still like $1 million car. It was still an $800,000 or $900,000 car at that time. And I just thought, man, $600,000 is getting you this amazing house, plus an $800,000. You would be dumb not to buy it. But the problem is, who has that kind of money? But if you have that money, you have an awesome opportunity to probably buy a $3 or $4 million house, and what is now probably a $4 or $5 or $6 million car. You have the opportunity to spend $600,000 to make like $8 million, right? Who wouldn't do that? But my point here is that when I was talking about Brian, he was talking about getting that line of credit, right? Maybe you don't have to solve that right now, but for some of us average people, just getting the credit that you can get when you don't need it so that you have that opportunity to exploit or to take advantage of those deals when they come about is like the middle American's way of exploiting some of these inefficiencies sometimes, some of these disconnects, right? We aren't billionaires that say, hey, you know what? Twitter's on sale. I'm going to buy Twitter today. Some of those things are just out of bounds. But I tell you what, even in the 80s, there are people that could have probably put together $180,000 for Necker Island. I think the $6 million list price just scared a bunch of people away that could probably put together $180,000, but wouldn't even look at it because they didn't even think that was in the realm of thinking, right? If they had put $1 million price tag on it, then maybe they actually would have gotten more closer to $1 million, to be really honest. And so that is what made me intrigued by this story. Not just the numbers, but the idea that there are these times when you can exploit the fire sale, the distressed buyer. And for the average person, if you don't have access to credit, if you don't have a lot of cash on hand, you'll never be able to do that. In fact, most recently, and I didn't put this story in there, but it's the AT&T tower, I believe, in St. Louis. Did you see this? It sold for almost $250 million a decade ago. It sold for $4 million recently in auction, went bankrupt. $230 million to $4 million. There are homes, there are vacation homes up in Traverse City that are more than $4 million. There are homes a couple blocks over that are more than $4 million. To get a 60-story building for $4 million kind of blows my mind. And that's what this falls into, is that category, that sometimes there are just amazing deals. And most of us average people won't ever hear about them. But if you do stumble across them, and this kind of falls in the category of it's too good to be true, it's probably not true, but there are these amazing deals sometimes. And if you not only stay tuned to hearing them, but if you have the capital or the credit to be able to exploit them, take advantage of them, then that can put you in a really great financial situation. Just one of these deals could be enough to set you up for life, right? Obviously, Branson wanted it as a playground, as a home. Who wouldn't if you could? But my point here is that maybe the recession comes around and you've been looking for a minivan and they're $48,000. They are. Oh my gosh, the Kia Carnival and the Toyota Sienna and the Chrysler Pacifica, these are $50,000, $60,000 minivans. But I tell you what, if someone down the street was trying to unload one of these minivans that's now worth me, let's call it $35,000, and they just wanted $8,000 or $9,000 or $10,000, that'd be a great deal. That'd be a great deal. Possibly sell that thing maybe as the economy recovers for $20,000 or $30,000, right? I'm just making up numbers here. But if you have that money, if you have that credit and can do it, man, you could take advantage of that and potentially put some money in your pocket later. You could be that Richard Branson. So anyway, it's a true story that I really thought was interesting, but it's a true story that I think also gives us some lessons for ourselves. So that's why I picked it. That's why it is story number 1, a Swell Time. If you want to pick up True Tales of Greed, Generosity, Success, and Luck, then please click on the link below, and hopefully you will enjoy it. That's it for now. I'll see you later.